Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Hettiarachchie. I have with me this evening two of our quite regular guests who have not been on the show in quite some time. I'm talking about Mr. Rohana Hettiarachchie, who is the chairman of the Asian Network for Free Elections, ANFREL. And with him is Mr. Manjula Gajanayake, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Reform and Electoral Studies, IRIS. Good evening and welcome back to the show, gentlemen. Good to have you again.
Good evening, it is after a long time, yeah.
Yes, a long time. That's because Sri Lanka hasn't had elections in a long time, but we had 3 consecutively and quite a lot back then.
We are waiting for provincial elections anyway.
Yes, yeah. we are. More about that later. But we are going to talk about the Bangladeshi election because both of you played quite a role in the monitoring of the Bangladeshi election. And that election, of course, was quite crucial because it came in the aftermath, rather, of the tumultuous removal of the regime of Sheikh Hasina and then of course after a significant period of time on the 12th of February they had this election and now they have a new government. So Rohana, let me start with you. How was your experience with that election? What was it like?
Well, I have been involved with elections observation in Bangladesh in 2008 elections, which was the last elections which international observers observe, and also it was the last elections which was held under Independent Elections Commission. So the last 15 years from 2008 onwards up to the last elections, there was no free fair elections. It doesn't mean that these elections also took place in a free fair conditions, but comparatively it's a peaceful elections. And also for me, I was there for almost 10 days, but we as ANFREL, we deploy around 28 observers across the country. We were managed to get the overall picture. In generally the Bangladesh is a very violent country when we talk about the elections, even in the past. So this elections less violence compare with the past elections, number one. Number two, that means the peaceful election in a way, and it was orderly, and we need to salute, we need to respect the elections commissions. Actually, it was newly appointed elections commission under the interim government. So the interim government did not have any political interference or political interest. That was a good sign. So they allow elections commission, so election management body, to run the election independently. They have make enormous effort. Actually, they had to train thousands of, in Bangladesh is the huge country, the big voter populations, 127 millions. The voter population itself, 42,000 polling stations. It's not like Sri Lanka. So they had to make enormous effort to train, because the elections took place after so many years. So enormous effort to train the people. And also there were a lot of issues with regard to the security. On the election, just one day before the elections, the announcement was nearly 59% polling stations are under risk. Some of them are high risk, some of them medium. So that was the situation. So considering that situations, I'm happy to say the election was peaceful, orderly and credible. So those are my, even impact when we handle the press briefing there, those are my opening remarks actually for the election. So I think this is significant, as you said, that it is a critical and it's a significant landmark in Bangladesh history. And I think 39% youth, first time voters, because they didn't have chance to vote last 15 years. Nearly 40 people, the first time voters, were able to cast their vote. And there was the referendum also in parallel with the parliamentary elections. So for me, I think it was completed in a successful manner.
Excellent. Now, Manjula, let me bring you in to talk about what it's like to be an election monitor in a foreign country. We are used to international monitors visiting Sri Lanka for our elections, and we know what they do. They move around, they evaluate, they produce excellent reports and so on, and recommendations. But what was it like for you gentlemen, who are, of course, very experienced in elections both here and in other countries? What was it like to cover this critical election in Bangladesh?
Thanks for having me in this discussion, Niresh, and thanks also to Mr. Rohan also, because I was there in election monitoring because of under his invitation, because he's the chairperson of ANFREL. Then in terms of election monitoring, wherever we are monitoring, it is a challenging job and a challenging task. However, that it is all about the pre-preparation. If you can do your homework best in a better way, then actually you can do such election monitoring in a better way. That when we enter to Bangladesh, that ANFREL, the management, the staff, they have prepared everything for us. The main thing is actually before we enter to the country, any monitor, they have to monitor the background as well as the data and statistics and the previous conditions also. I had a golden opportunity, because before I attended to the election monitoring under the invitation of ANFREL, I was there because I conducted several training programs for monitors on election violence, because as Ms. Rohana explained, there were many organized political violence more than election violence. It's a country where that the many of after the liberation, that 1971, there were many of organized political violence. It has translated as election violence when it comes to election times. Then what was that at that time, there was necessity to train some of election monitors on election violence. That's why I was there earlier, prior to the election monitoring. When it comes to the election monitoring, the first thing is the preparation. The second thing is actually you have to apply their condition. Yes, we are representing international monitoring base. However, we have to respect the local condition as well as their local rules. Then that is the second thing. Third thing is actually that you should have a passion and willingness to learn more and more regarding their condition. Then if you can fulfill those three pre-requirements, then you can be a best election monitor.
Now, Manjula, did you get to travel around a lot within Bangladesh? Because field visits to the polling stations and counting centers and all that, how was it? Was there an element of risk in that?
Yes, indeed. That according to the distribution plan of ANFREL, there were nearly 28 international observers. Then luckily I had a chance to visit and stationed in Gopalganj area. That is the basic electorate of Sheikh Hasina. That as you mentioned earlier, that she was the prime minister, former prime minister, as well as she's in India right now and the leader of Awami League. In this time that the major political party, that Awami League, has banned, therefore they were not contested in last election. However, that it is a different experience. That I was there, that Gopalganj area. There are 8 divisions in Bangladesh. Out of 8 divisions, we were in one division, that under the Dhaka division, actually we were based in Gopalganj, Madripur and Shariapur, those three constituencies. Then it is, that when comparing with the overall results and the overall election environment, Gopalganj area where I was actually totally different. The different thing is that the Gopalganj area is a stronghold of Awami League. Most of maybe 60% of voters were not visited polling station, cast their votes, because of they are still believing that until they are waiting until Awami League is contesting. That's the unique feature of that area. But considering other areas, those 28 observers were distributed, were traveling other countries, but on nearly election days, actually, they were based central, that the unique place. That's why I was in there. However, we had a good chance, because on election day, as you asked, that the election day, I was able to travel more than 14 polling stations. Though there are 14 polling stations, there are maybe nearly 50 polling booths. That's the differentiate in Bangladesh. In one polling station, you can expect maybe 3 or 4 polling booths.
Interesting. So, somewhat different experience to Sri Lanka. But now, Rohana, addressing the issue of the Awami League being banned and therefore unable to contest, what sort of impact did it have on this election and on the spirit of the voters themselves?
Well, actually, it was quite critical questions even in Bangladesh, even in pre-election period and the elections day, because it was challenged the inclusivity of elections, because Awami League is one of the major party which was run the country for so many times in last 15 years. But also we need to understand the contest, the political contest immediately after this Aragalai or youth uprising. And I think interim government did not have any other alternative. So I have checked with many locals in case if they have not banned it, and if they contest, if they were able to contest in the recent past elections, and many people said there will be the electoral environment will be completely different, and it will be violence-full elections. I mean we do not know actually, but anyway, it was challenge. And it was not good for inclusive process. But giving the contest, considering the given contest, I think that was the option. Now, the main responsibility of the present ruling party, the BNP, they were the main oppositions at that time. So now their responsibility to start the reconciliation process. So as international observers, as a person who is more seriously consider of the governance and inclusivity, so I highly recommend for the present government to start the reconciliation process. We need to open for the Awami Leaguers also to come to the political system again. And there can, if there is a criminal case, there should be some legal process to handle that. But their political part, I mean, as Manjula correctly said, there are thousands of people, the millions of people who are willing to support the Awami League. So in the future elections, they should open for them. And actually, most of them, I think, they boycott, and some of them will support the BNP and other parties. In the Asian politics, somehow there is a relations or related each political parties with the family circles. But I think it's up to the next elections. We should wait and see how the Awami League, how the BNPs make this reconciliation before the next parliamentary elections. Yeah.
Right, and that's an inclusive sort of point, isn't it? Where if you don't have that inclusivity, generally in many countries you see the political movement being driven underground and some perhaps towards violence. I mean, we've had that experience in Sri Lanka where the JVP was banned or proscribed. And
but in Sri Lanka it's only one case, but the Awami League, they did the same thing last 15 years. They have banned many political parties. They will not allow some parties to come into the mainstreaming politics because they also done a wrong thing. But that doesn't mean that in a good electoral system we also should do the same thing. But it's completely, I think, they also fail to maintain the inclusivity because they were not allowed the other main parties to run the elections, and there were a lot of harassment and they were taken into jail. Many party leaders were in jail so many years. Thousands of people died because of the democracy fighting. So it was not a good environment prior to this Aragali. I think that's why this youth oppression also started. It was quite different from Sri Lanka. Actually, fortunately in Sri Lankan contests it was peaceful, even though there are a couple of incidents took place isolatedly and a couple of people died. But in Bangladesh, thousands youth would die, very small boys, teenagers, but they were courage to fight for democracy. I think we need to appreciate or we need to salute them, but it was quite violence. I think mainly because of Awami League took a decision. We saw some of these the letters because we were fortunate to visit their museum. They were build the uprising museum. It has not opened yet, but we were privileged as international observers to visit that, and we saw some letters which was written by some of these party leaders and given the orders to the military, and so in considering such an environment, I think there was no other option for the interim government. That's my personal understanding.
Let me to reconfirm what Ms. Rohana said. I met several persons during pre-election time. Manfred gave a chance to travel everywhere in our areas. Then I met several villagers. Then they told us they have not cast their votes for decades. The reason is that area was that the Awami League stronghold, because Awami League supporters have not allowed them to vote. That's the reason. That is what Ms. Rohana said. Actually, then the previous regime also that have did the same thing in that area, but we know that the current government is trying to change the system. Yeah.
Right. So this is interesting because when I covered elections perhaps 35 years ago, we had similar situations. Voter intimidation, violence was quite normal in Sri Lanka.
Of course, yeah.
And you gentlemen know this, of course. And over the years, we have perhaps the word is matured as voters, as the public, even if politicians may not have matured, the voters have. So that's why we have such peaceful elections now, and people go out and vote, and make sure that democracy will flourish. So it seems to me that Bangladesh is perhaps in an early stage of this. What do you think?
Yes, definitely. Because as you correctly mentioned, we know that even this time I saw that we were attended to the press conference conducted by OJICA and the organizations. They reported that there were only 50 odd election violence, but comparing with other election, hundreds and thousands of election violence, the major incidents have reported during their elections. But comparing with Sri Lanka, that it is a totally different scenarios. The number one is that, let me talk on the last election, that last three elections. The last three elections, we saw that the political authorities, special political parties, that if you need to reduce election violence, the major I mean, the who can contribute to that, the key intervention can be made by the political party leadership. Okay, last time we saw that the Jatika Janabalawegaya and other political parties, we should appreciate those political party leaders because they were refrained, motivating their supporters to enter any election violence. But when it comes to, as you correctly mentioned, that let me to highlight the one election that they conducted in 25th January 1999, that the Northwestern Provincial Council election. It was that we can introduce it as a daylight robbery. That's the explanation that we can. Luckily, we didn't have social media at that time. Otherwise, it is a black mark for our election history, election year in Sri Lanka. However, you know that it is a joint effort made by not only election authorities, civil society organization, as well as media. You know that last time even we saw how they were responsible when they are reporting election violence. You know that most of people are criticizing sometimes regarding media reporting, but you know that especially private media, I don't want to mention those medias, but few private media not only reporting election results, they were conducted many of fruitful, meaningful election related programs prior to the elections. If you can remember, you also conducted several programs related to the campaign finance. How many programs we did? But in contrary to the Bangladesh, then when we visited some areas, especially Madaripur and Gopalganj, I asked a specific question from media. Then, have you conducted any awareness program on civic education regarding elections? No. We are not entering, because if we are entering to that, someone will blame that we are taking someone's side. That's their narration. But that means there's a doubt on their role. No? But in Sri Lanka, we are welcome when media are doing something related to the voter education, as well as, you know, that as I mentioned earlier, organized political violence. Some of politicians have maintained that the paramilitary groups we don't know which political parties have handled in Bangladesh, but comparing with Sri Lanka, there were many of paramilitary groups. As Ms. Rohana mentioned, we were privileged. We had a privilege to visit that museum, still building. You know that Mr. Niresh, you also should visit some in near future. They have shown that some of equipments they have used to harass people during last regime. Then you know that as human being, we were ashamed to see such kind of torturing that they have done for the people. That's the situation. Then when it comes to Sri Lanka, you know, the voter education is very high. When it comes to voter turnout, in 2024 elections, Bangladesh, it is nearly 40%. But this time, even in the absence of major political parties in Bangladesh, still it is nearly 60%, 59.4. Then it also a success. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, you know that our voter percentage is very high ever, you know, that in past election and last 3 elections also.
Right. We need to take a short commercial break. I am with Mr. Rohana Hettiarachchie and Mr. Manjula Gajanayake. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
මේ ගෙවල් දොරවල් පේන් කරලා මොකටද මැනිකේ? වෙඩින් එකෙන් පස්සේ පුතාලා මෙහෙ ඉන්නේ නෑනේ.
මොකද නැත්තේ? සුමේදත් එක්ක කතා කරන විදිහ නම් මට පොල්පිටිගමදී හොඳට ඇහුණා.
බලන්න මම කොච්චර මවාගෙනද කතා කළේ. එහෙම තමයි මැනිකේ. පුතේ මේක ලීක් කරපු එක ඔබ දන්නවනම් මට කියහම් පුතේ. අංකිතා තොරාර මම.
කොටෝ අද රාත්‍රී 9:30ට සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්.
Welcome back to Face to Face. I am with Rohana Hettiarachchie, who is the chairman of the Asian Network for Free Elections, ANFREL, and Mr. Manjula Gajanayake, executive director of the Institute for Democratic Reform and Electoral Studies, IRIS. And we are discussing the recent Bangladeshi election and its impact on the rest of South Asia. Now, Rohana, let's look at some of the lessons that we in Sri Lanka could perhaps learn from the Bangladeshi election, because from every election around the world there are lessons to be learned which could be applicable to our country or perhaps not. So what are some of the lessons that we can gather from Bangladesh?
There are good lessons and bad lessons also, positive and negative. I'm just joking. On vote buying is large scale in Bangladesh, and it's openly, and there was no enormous Facebook informations also openly giving the money. So those are some negative things. But I was impressed by the elections management. First time in Bangladesh history that they were managed to start overseas voting, and also in-country voting, those who are unable to go to their polling stations. We are struggling last 10-15 years in Sri Lanka also. But after 15 years of undemocratic practice in Bangladesh, under this new leadership, interim leadership and interim the elections management, even though they are less experienced, but they took steps to introduce this postal voting mechanism. There were around 1.5 million in country and outside the country. They managed to use the postal voting for elections. Initially, actually, we were little keen to study on that, because we as in Sri Lanka also now we have appointed the committee to study overseas voting. I think Cabinet has approved in several occasions this in-country voting and overseas voting. So we were little keen to study their system. Basically, there is a mechanism for them to register online. Those who are in overseas, they can register online, mentioning there are security code also, but their address and all the details they can. When they do register, they can include those informations, and then the Elections Commission will send the ballot paper manually by the government using the government resources. All the expenses bared by the Elections Commissions. So the voters will get the ballot paper in their residence. In country also the same, and then they can mark their ballot secretly, privately. I mean, it's completely up to them, and they can hand over to the post. So the posted expenses fully covered by the elections management, and before the elections day, or they will send it to the relevant constituency or other district, because we are practicing here proportionate system, that there is past the post system, so we have to send it to the constitution. So it was nicely organized in this postal voting mechanism, so which we can exercise here. Actually, I'm happy to explain a little bit on that, because it's really
it's a crucial
aspect for Sri Lanka. I have observed many countries where they have used the different system. Bangladesh, for simple examples, recent elections after the suppressing, then Nepal, India, Indonesia, even in Maldives, Philippines. Within our regions, there are so many countries they exercise this voting right.
So
in country,
about time that we did so.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we so far we were not able to exercise it. They are using advanced voting, they are using postal voting, they are using proxy voting, e-voting. There are many different ways that we can use, and we can get those experience from the different countries, and we can localize it. I mean, considering our local context, considering our values, considering our electoral system, we can localize, and we can start a system at least for before next parliamentary and the presidential election. So that was one of important lesson which I learned from Bangladesh, which we can also bring it here, because this is the right time to discuss that matter. So I'm so happy to take part on that. Yeah.
Right. Now, Manjula, to explain this further, in Sri Lanka, although we have postal voting, it's limited to certain segments, principally to the government workers,
Government workers who are involved with election work.
Right.
Not the government workers. Actually, it will be misinterpreted. As Manjula correctly said, not the entire government workers.
Right.
Doctors, nurses, and other sectors may not get entertained. Only those who are supposed to be a part of the elections administrations. Yeah. But there are around 1 million voters within the country. For a simple example, even you and me, the media and the elections observers, private security firms, doctors, I mean the health sector people, fisheries sector, the media sector. So there are so many sectors because of their the working method or working environment, they may not able to go to their polling station on the elections day. So we can have a either advanced voting mechanism for them to cast vote. Postal voting is one option, or otherwise we can establish a separate polling stations near their working place. For a simple example, now Hettiarachchie predate zone. If you establish a voting box there for the presidential election, because presidential election simply we can do it, the entire country is one board. So wherever you are, you can vote for the presidential election. Parliamentary and the local election little complicated, but there are easily within the existing legal framework also we can do certain things.
Even mobile polling stations.
Mobile polling stations. Now, simple example, I have experience in Afghanistan. I have mentioned in number of occasions. Even the Taliban prisoners during that period, they were managed to cast their votes. Even in Myanmar, the democracy is compared with us. They are far low. But still, there is a system for the elderly people, disabled people. Election management will visit house to house and get their vote. So there are enough experience across Asia where we can get those experience and we can establish our own mechanism.
Right. And Manjula, now Rohana mentioned elderly people, disabled people. We in Sri Lanka, we have a high proportion of elderly people in our population, and that is only getting larger and larger. So it's imperative that such people should be facilitated, because you can't expect them to come to the polling station. I'm sure already there are so many elderly people who simply don't vote.
Yes, indeed. You know that according to the census report published in 2012, that there was 1.6 million people, including elderly people, actually, that the persons with disabilities, as Mr. Rohana mentioned, and this time also more than 1.6 million, that according to the newest census report published in 2024. You know that Sri Lankan Election Commission introduced inclusive election process in 2015 once they established the transform Department of Election as election commissions. And from 2015 up to now, they have taken some initiatives, even some organization including PAFRAL, DOJ, that they are giving a wonderful support to the election commission. However, you know that providing facilities for elderly people and other sectors shouldn't be a single task of election commission. You know that the government entities like Department of Social Service and other ministries, other departments, boards should be supported, as well as civil society organizations. But in this moment, what we can see is that some of civil society organizations are giving their support. Election Commission also taking their support, but it has not mainstream still. That's the problem. When it comes to the elderly people, you know that in Sri Lanka there are nearly 13,000 polling stations. When it comes to Bangladesh, nearly 42,000 polling stations. Accordingly, they had nearly 240,000 polling booths. What I experienced, but in the media statement, that press conference conducted by ANFREL, I heard that as the chairperson, Ms. Rohana, said in some areas there were some problems. However, my area that I was there, that Gopalganj area, you may not believe, I visited more than 40 polling booths. Each and every polling booth, they have assigned 2 special polling agents, special officials. We call them as Ansar officials, because if someone entered to the polling stations, especially elderly people, they are approaching them and take them, accompany them to the polling booth. But in Sri Lanka, we are not experienced that, okay, and as well as they are providing some rickshaw and some kind of things. But in Sri Lanka, most of times actually we have not witnessed such facilities given by election commissions. However, according to the request as well as long-term demand of civil society organizations, they are trying to do something. But as you correctly mentioned, you know that we should change the approach. Though now it almost 10 years, almost decade introducing inclusive election process. But you know that my understanding is that everyone are thinking that it is a duty of election commission and maybe election monitoring missions. That's the problem. You know that some of entities like Ministry of Department of Social Service and other entities, actually they can give an enormous support to election commission and others. I think the real lacuna is that we can't see a holistic approach towards facilitating an inclusive election process.
Well, we certainly need to improve our inclusivity. We've been talking about in-country, but our overseas citizens, people who are working very hard in the Middle East and other areas of the world, toiling away, and they don't get to vote. So definitely something has to be done with regard to that.
Yeah.
And there is a committee which is looking into it. But let me get to something else, Rohana. Women representation in Parliament. And I was quite surprised to see that there is a quota in Bangladesh for women in Parliament, and we don't have one in Sri Lanka. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a quota for women only on the local council, but in Bangladesh, they have a quota for 50 parliamentarians. It's a completely separate allocation for 50 women's.
So they this can is take 50 out of 350.
50 out of 300. But of course, there are around 4% out of 300 get elected contesting election. But this 40 is completely different from that elected members. In addition, I'm really not happy with the percentage of youth also. Youth also, I think only 6 parliamentarians get elected the last election, even though it was with all these elections and all this governance are established after this youth uprising, and they established a political party also. They call it NCP, National Citizens Party, right? National Citizen Party. But they engage with strategically engage with Jamaati, so they get only 6 seats out of 300. So youth representation is quite low. The women's, at least they get this 50 plus 4%. So there are some around, I think 60 something women's almost there. So that's a good signal, because we also 225. So how many we have? Unfortunately, because of this, the present ruling party, they have allocated quite big number, but otherwise we had only 6% in total. Almost last couple of decades, we had only representation.
Which is very low.
Very low, yeah.
Right, and needs to be improved upon, and perhaps Parliament should look at that.
Neeraj, for me, and my argument is this quota doesn't make big sense for long run. The political parties should have a mechanism to encourage women to get into politics. There are higher authority, higher executive levels. They should have a space for women to run, not the real the elections. The political party structure should have some sort of a space for them to get experience, and there's no women's arm at all. Most of the political parties. So just to bring a quota doesn't make big sense. So that's my personal view. Yeah.
Right. So basically our political parties, or some of them, need to embrace democracy within their parties.
Exactly.
Right. We're almost out of time. So final thoughts from you, Manjula?
Yeah, you know that it is always elections are belong to the people. Then I think that the Pakistan, Bangladesh people proved that it is belongs to them, because you know that in a controversial turmoil time, they were able to go to polling stations, and voter turnout also, I mean, it is not satisfactory level, but 60% is considering the situation, it is satisfactory level. And also there's a glimmer of hopes as we surpass that. There's a mass protest, as well as we promoted 21st constitutional amendment. They had more than 30 special provisions and July charter. Now there's a hope because they had male prime minister after almost 35 years. Now it is not yes, there's a 2/3 majority. However, they are bound to implement a July charter. That is a glimmer of hopes. I think that in future, they will be able to see some results due to the elections.
Right. And Rohana, your final thoughts, and I'd like you to speak a little bit about ANFREL, the Asian Network for Free Elections, of which you are the chairman.
Well, ANFREL is
and also the elections that are coming up, which you will be covering.
Yeah, actually ANFREL is a network. We are working across Asia. We are member-based organization like PAFREL. So the rest of the Asia, we do have a similar network, similar organizations. For a simple example, now in Philippines we have COMLEC, like PAFREL, COMLEC. Actually Philippines is the pioneer of the elections observations, and Pakistan we have PEPAN, something like that. Each and every country we do have a local partner, so either one or two. So in 1997 we get together and we form this network, because we thought that there should be some place for us to share our experience, good practices like we do here now. So ANFREL built in that perspective, and so during last 30 years, actually we have been covered, I think, more than 75 elections across Asia, the different elections, and we do have our own principles, we do have our own international standard, we do have a Bangkok declarations, we do have a Delhi indicator, we do have a Sri Lankan pledge. So there are so many international principles, standard which we follow. And we beyond the elections observations, actually we are supporting our member organizations to strengthen the democracy in their own countries. For simple example, before this Bangladesh elections, we train our members in Bangladesh how to do elections observations. And not only that, actually we help the elections commission, because elections commission also completely knew the system. So we had a exchange program. Actually we invite Sri Lankan elections commission also, we invite the Filipino elections commission. We share the experience across Asia. Now the biggest forum which we organize from 2012 onwards Asian Stakeholders Forum, which we took place in 2018 in Sri Lanka also. That is the largest forum where we are bringing all the election stakeholders, elections management body, elections observers, academia, some donor agencies, development partners, bring together in one platform, basically around 300 to 400 stakeholders in one place. 2-3 days discussions, sharing best practices, experience with all the stakeholders. So that is how we improve the Sri Lankan governance system also with regard to the elections. And it's same like the other countries also, because we sharing best practices, a simple example, advanced voting, alternative voting, elections, independent elections commission practice. So we were, my last 30 years, I think we managed to contribute lot for Asia when it's come to the democracy of elections, the best practices. Yeah.
Right, and I'm afraid we're out of time. My thanks to Rohana Hettiarachchie, Chairman of the Asian Network for Free Elections, ANFREL, and of course Manjula Gajanayake, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Reform and Electoral Studies, IRIS. Thank you very much, and it was lovely having you both on the show again after some time. And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.
TV1, TV for life.
Fuel distribution continues uninterrupted across the island. No fuel shortage, government reiterates. Issuing fuel to containers and cans prohibited. Strict legal action announced against those hoarding unnecessary fuel stocks. State of public emergency extended once again. 15 services further designated as essential services. All flights to the Middle East remain cancelled. Around 10,000 tourists stranded in